Hey traders, it's John Fortune here of this week's Weekly Forex Forecast. We're going to run through over 30 markets, highlighting targets in each market for the week ahead. As we go through the markets, we're going to build out a high probability watch list along the way for next week. Last week we highlighted 23 high probability markets, and out of those 23, 18 of them went to their targets, and 4 out of the 5 that didn't reach their targets were only a handful of pips away from doing so. So all in all, huge amounts of trading opportunities last week, and it looks as though we may have the same again this week. Starting with the US dollar index, you can see we're on a daily chart here, and in terms of the dollar index, we've noted over a number of previous videos that the dollar index looks to be in a fourth wave correction. We are anticipating it to come down to the 88.46, but we've noted it has not yet reversed to the downside. That would happen on a break below the 90.05. All this simply means is that for the time being, the dollar is bullish to neutral. We highlighted last week the 90.12, and this was the low tick of the week. We came tested this and we bounced to the upside, but you can see we didn't really go anywhere. Once we bounced from the 90.120, we were kind of capped in the up moves and we started to roll back down towards the 90.120. So going into this week, what this means is, as we have been for a number of previous videos, I'm going to go into next week with a neutral overall bias on the dollar. And it just simply means, as we've been doing, we're going to once again look outside of the dollar pairs for the best opportunities. And any trader who would have followed this over the last month or so would have saved themselves quite a bit of headache, because once we're in a fourth wave correction, opportunities start to dry up within that currency. And over the last 6 to 8 weeks, we've had a huge amount of trading opportunities outside of the dollar pairs while this market has just moved sideways. It's also a very important reason why you should never just say, I'm only going to trade euro dollar, for example, because if the dollar moves sideways for 6 to 8 weeks, you have to go and find the volatility in other markets. So we're going to go into this week with a neutral bias on the dollar, and it means we're going to be looking outside of the dollar pairs primarily in terms of trading opportunities next week. The next market we're going to look at is crude oil. Last week we were bullish on this market and we highlighted this as one to watch, and we took out the target to the upside at 61.98 to the pip in this market. Very simply put, going into this week, we're looking for further advances to the upside as the higher probability move. Any correction back down towards the 53.21 is simply going to be viewed as another opportunity to look for bullish reversals in this market, up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 63.37. Next market we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now euro dollar is structured to the downside near term. This is a counter trend rally. If you look at the bigger picture or the daily chart, this is a counter trend rally of a bigger up move. We did highlight the 1.21570 to look for a bounce from this area last week, and we bounced right from this level. I would still favor shorts down towards the 1.18950 if you are looking to trade euro dollar. However, just bear in mind this is not going to be added to the watch list for next week as a high probability opportunity, because of its counter trend status. And in fact, in euro dollar, what I would really prefer to see is a break above the 1.21890, and that is when we could start to look to initiate long positions in this market, and we would consider this as a near-term reversal to the upside with an inverse head and shoulders confirmed above this level. Next is pound dollar. Now last week pound dollar was marked as a high probability move to the upside, and we took out both targets to the upside in this market. This is going to be added to the watch list again this week, and I am looking for further long positions in this market. Any correction, we're coming up towards the target, so any correction first is going to be viewed as the opportunity to once again start to look for bullish setups in this market. I'm going to be looking up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 1.4076. So once again, just to reiterate, I do prefer next week to look outside of the dollar pairs for trading opportunities, but within the dollar pairs, pound dollar to the upside is one to watch. Next is US dollar Japanese yen. Now last week we highlighted this as a high probability move to the upside, and we did take out both targets to the upside in this market. Going into this week, we have started to correct towards the 104.780, so any breakout to the upside in this market is once again going to be viewed as an opportunity to look for potential long positions up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 106.43. Next is Aussie dollar. Now Aussie dollar was another market we highlighted as a high probability move to the upside, and we took out the target set from last week, and we came quite close to the second target. Very simply put, going into this week, any correction once again in this market is going to be viewed as an opportunity to look for bullish setups up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and target 2 from last week, the 0.7916. Next is New Zealand dollar. Now New Zealand dollar was a market we highlighted the upside last week, and it was one of the 5 that didn't hit the target, but you can see it came very, very close. We had a really nice rally to the upside, almost taking out the target. So very simply put, any correction for anybody not already involved in this market from last week would be viewed as another opportunity to start to look for bullish breakouts in this market up towards the next key resistance, the upside, and the target set from last week at the 0.7322, and on a breakthrough here, up towards target 2, at the 0.7389. Next is US dollar Swiss franc. Not a market we highlighted as a high probability move last week. You can see it's been fairly choppy. We have put the levels on here for anybody who wants to trade this, and the structure as well. I would favor long positions up towards the 0.9088 in this market. However, what I would really like to see in this market is a breakdown below the 0.88710. This would signal for us to start to look for short positions in this market in line with its overall trend. So patience may be the best policy in US dollar Swiss franc. Next is US dollar CAD. Now last week highlighted this to the downside as a high probability move. This was the one out of the 5 that I didn't put down as coming close to the target, but you can see we still had quite a large down week. So for anybody not already short from last week, any correction once again in this market is simply viewed as another opportunity to look for bearish reversals down towards the next key of support to the downside and the target highlighted from last week at the 1.2537. Next is gold. Now last week gold came down, taking out the target set at 1764.75, almost to the pip, and in fact we found the low in gold last week with that level. Going into this week I would still favor shorts in this market down to the 1745.47. However, it's just worth bearing in mind that this is not going to be on the high probability watch list this week. Having said that, that did not stop it from taking out its target to the downside last week. That wraps up the dollar pairs for this week. There are a couple of high probability opportunities that I'm looking at, although, as I said before, I would favor looking outside of the dollar pairs next week. Next is Euro Yen. Last week highlighted as a high probability move to the upside, and we took out the target set at the 127.96. Very simply put, going into this week, any sell-off as we already have here is just simply viewed as another opportunity to look for bullish breakouts in this market, up towards the next key resistance, the upside and the target set at the 129.26. Next is franc yen. Now last week franc yen reversed to the upside, wasn't down as a high probability opportunity. Going into this week, however, it is going to be going on the watch list because it is now structured to the upside overall, and I do favor long positions in this market. We've started to sell off, so any bullish reversal in this market is going to be viewed next week as an opportunity to look for long positions up towards the next key resistance, the upside and the target set at the 118.83. Next is pound yen. Now last week we highlighted the 146.73 to the upside, and we took out this target and then some. Going into this week, this is once again highlighted as one to watch. It does go on the high probability watch list. We are approaching the next key resistance, the upside. So what I'd like to see is a correction first towards the 143.150. Not looking for it to come all the way back, but any correction in this direction is going to be viewed as the opportunity to start to look for bullish breakouts in this market. I'm going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key resistance, the upside and the target set at the 148.79. Next is Aussie yen. Last week highlighted as a high probability move to the upside. We took out the target at the 82.60, and I am interested in looking for long positions in this market next week. I do like this market. We have a commodity currency to the upside in the form of the Aussie dollar, and we have a risk off currency in terms of the Japanese yen to the downside. So you have that kind of reflationary scenario. You see commodity currencies outperform, risk off currencies underperforming like the dollar, like the yen. So going into this week, I do like this to the upside. As I said, any correction in the direction of the 79.83 is going to be viewed once again as an opportunity to look for bullish breakouts. I'm going to be looking up towards the next key resistance, the upside and the target set at the 83.81. Next is CAD yen. Last week highlighted as a high probability move to the upside. We did take out the target, smashed through the target at the 83.11, and we came very close to the second target. Going into this week, this is one to watch. Again, I would like to look for long positions in this market next week. We're quite close to the second target from last week, so what I would like to see here, because there's diminishing risk to reward opportunities as you start to approach these targets, is any correction at the start of next week would be viewed as the opportunity to look for bullish breakouts in this market up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set from last week, target 2 at the 84.12. Next is New Zealand yen. Now, very much like CAD yen and Aussie yen, you have that dynamic of the commodity currency versus the risk-off currency. And last week, this helped this take out the target to the upside at the 76.77. That was virtually the high of the week. Going into this week, I would be interested again at looking for long positions in this market. We have some nice momentum to the upside. So any correction in the near term would be viewed as another opportunity to look for bullish reversals in this market up towards the next key area of resistance, the upside, the target set at the 77.52. Next is Euro Franc. Now, last week we highlighted the 1.0871 to the upside as a target, and we noted this as a high probability move. This was one of the 5 that didn't reach the target. As you can see, out of those, this was so close. This was just a couple of pips shy, so it's still a very nice rally to the upside from last week. Since we're so close to the target, the trade really was from last week. So either we take out this target first, or either way, we need to see a correction in this market towards the 1.07910 to start to get some good risk-reward opportunities once again. For anybody not involved last week, this is what I would be looking for, and a reversal to the upside would be the sign to start to look for bullish positions up towards, first of all, the target from last week at the 1.0871, and then on to target 2 at the 1.0891. Next is Euro New Zealand. This was a great trading market last week. We highlighted the fact this had started to correct over the last week or so, and we were looking for a sell-off, looking for reversals to the downside, highlighted as a high probability move into the 1.6619. We did take out this level, and this was pretty much the low of last week. Going into this week, this remains on the high probability watch list, and I am interested in shorting this market once again. We have really nice momentum in this market, so any correction towards the 1.67590 is going to be a great opportunity to start to look for bearish reversals next week, down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at the 1.6527. Next is EurUsd, highlighted to the downside as a high probability market. We took out both levels to the downside, another really nice market last week. We have really great momentum in this market going into this week, so any correction in EurUsd is simply going to be viewed as an opportunity to once again look for short positions down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at the 1.5353. Next is Euro Pound. Now, last week we highlighted a high probability sell-off into the 0.8682, and we did take out this target to the downside last week. This was actually the target I closed my longer term Euro Pound positions from the beginning of the year. For those of you who follow me on Twitter and follow the reports that I put out on FX Street, you'll know this is something we highlighted right at the beginning of the year. I booked my profits on this last week, not because I think there isn't more downside in this currency pair, but just because the risk to reward overall on the bigger trades was starting to dissipate as we approached the 0.8596 and the 0.85740. So very simply put, going into this week, I am still looking for short opportunities in this market, but just short-term opportunities. Any correction towards the 0.8762 is going to be viewed as another opportunity to look for bearish reversals in this market, down towards the next key of support to the downside and the target set at the 0.8596. Next is EuroCAD. Now, last week we highlighted this as a high probability sell-off, and we did sell off in this market, although we did not come down and take out the target to the 1.5246. For anybody not already short in this market, in order to get short again in this market, what I'd like to see is a correction back towards and into really the 1.53720 in this case. This would provide the opportunity to once again start to look for bearish reversals down towards the target set from last week, the 1.5246. Next is pound franc, highlighted last week as a high probability market to the upside, as a number of pound pairs were last week. We took out both targets and we finished the week more or less at the second target in this market. This is a great market this week. I'm going to be keeping my eye on this market to the upside once again. We are coming fairly close, not too close to the next target, so any correction in this market next week will set us up, will provide the opportunity to start to look for bullish reversals up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 1.2625. Next is pound Aussie. Now, pound Aussie last week confirmed a double or potentially triple top pattern in line with its overall trend, depending on which one you want to look at. And this long momentum to the downside is something which indicates further declines to the downside as well this week. So all in all, this goes on the watch list for next week. Because we're coming quite close to the target though, any correction in this area would be needed first in order to look for bearish setups in this market. If we start to break to the downside, we're going to be looking down towards the next key of support to the downside and the target set at the 1.7747. Next is pound CAD. Pound CAD was highlighted as a high probability move to the upside, as I said before, with a number of the pound pairs last week. We took out both targets, finishing the week at the second target. That was the high of the week. Very simply put, going into this week, I do favour long positions in this market once again. We've started to correct already, so any deeper correction is simply going to be viewed as another opportunity to look for bullish reversals in this market, up towards the next key of resistance, the upside, the target set at the 1.7873. Next is pound New Zealand, highlighted as one to watch to the upside last week. We took out the target at the 1.9316. I do still favour long positions going into this week, and this sell-off is simply viewed currently as a correction and just another opportunity to look for a bullish reversal in this market, up towards the next key of resistance, the upside, the target set at the 1.9480. Next is Aussie franc. We highlighted this as a high probability move to the upside, and it has that commodity currency safe haven asset dynamic as well, like we looked at earlier with the commodity currencies and the Japanese yen. We came within 2 pipettes of the 0.7058, and this was actually one of the 5 which missed the target last week. For all intents and purposes, this has really achieved this because the opportunity here has passed now. So in order to look for another position in this market, we really need to take out the target first from last week, and any correction after that towards the 0.68910 will be viewed as another opportunity to look for a bullish breakout up towards the next key of resistance, the upside, and the target set, the 0.7139. Next is Aussie CAD. Now, last week we highlighted this as one to watch to the upside, and we took out the target at the 0.99080, and we missed the second target by 4 pipettes, so 4/10ths of a pip, and that was the high in this market for last week. Going into this week, we have really nice momentum breaking out of this kind of choppy price action. So any correction, and I'd like to see it take out the first target first, but any correction after taking out the target from last week will be viewed as an opportunity to look once again for bullish reversals up towards the second key of resistance, the upside, and the target set at the 1.0048. Next is Aussie New Zealand. Now, in previous videos, we highlighted the target to the downside, which we bounced from, and we previously highlighted the key of resistance to look for a move into this area. This was not on the high probability watch list last week, and it is not on the watch list again this week. We've given you the levels here, so if you are looking to trade this, I would personally favour shorts in this market to the 1.0570. However, I think there are much better trading opportunities out there next week, and I'll be looking to filter this market out completely from my trading next week. Next is New Zealand CAD. This was not down as a high probability market last week, although we did come down and take out the target set at the 0.91320. Going into this week, we've pulled back and retested the 0.92090. It's not down as a high probability market for next week. So I would favour short positions in this market if you are looking at trading it down to the 0.90670. Chances are I'm just going to filter this market out completely next week, especially as we have so many on the watch list next week anyway. Next is New Zealand Swiss franc. This is a market we had down as a high probability move to the upside last week. We took out the target at the 0.6504, and we came very close to the second target to the upside. It's another currency pair with that commodity currency risk off / safe haven asset dynamic to it, and going into next week, this is again one to watch to the upside, and I do like this market, especially since we have that really nice momentum to the upside. So any correction at the start of next week is going to be viewed as an opportunity to once again look for bullish reversals in this market up towards, first of all, the second target from last week, although I expect this is probably going to take it out first, and primarily, therefore, the better or the greater risk reward in this market is up towards the second key of resistance, the upside, the target set from this week, the 0.6581. And last but never least is CAD franc. Last week down as a high probability move to the upside. We took out the target, came very close to the second target last week. Once again, interested in long positions in this market. It goes down as one to watch. We have that commodity currency, safe haven currency dynamic, and we have Canadian dollar catching a bid from the rally to the upside we're seeing in crude oil. Very simply put, any pullback in this market next week should be viewed as an opportunity to once again look for bullish setups in this market. And any breakouts to the upside, we're going to be looking up towards the target set from last week at the 0.7133. And if we can break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the second target to the upside, the 0.7201. So that is it for me for this week, guys. Lots of potential opportunities setting up next week. We have quite a large high probability watch list. As always, the name of the game is not to trade every market. The name of the game is to find the high probability markets, sit patiently and wait for the breakouts, for the reversals, for the tradable setups in those directions. So as always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A big thank you to everybody who does that on a regular basis, and everybody who has subscribed to the channel, and everybody who comments on the channel as well. I want to wish you all a nice weekend and a fantastic trading week next week. The only thing left to say is take care and don't forget to trade safely.